Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you do have questions tonight, you can private chat them to either Ceiling Cat or H. Foister, and we will get those answered for you. And we have with us Barbara Duncan.
I'm still here.
And Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And our other co-host, you might say, or regular on the show, is Thomas Wertman.
Still here once I unmute my mic. I think this is the first time I've done this, wouldn't you?
Well, probably. I don't know. Speaking, though, of listeners from around the world, Barbara, where do we have listeners at tonight? Maybe? She's looking it up, I can tell.
There we go. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Nigeria welcomes tonight.
Nigeria? That's a new one, isn't it?
I believe so.
I think we've had Nigeria before.
Possibly. It's been rare,
been a long
though.
time,
but yeah, welcome, everybody that's listening tonight. Hope you are enjoying the show. So what was we discussing when we left out? You was looking something up, wasn't you?
Yeah, we were talking about the interrupted journey and who wrote the book, and it was actually John Fuller who wrote the book. I was having a senior moment and couldn't remember, even though I've got a copy laying on my desk downstairs.
Yeah, but it's downstairs, so
yeah. But, it's. I think the reason they're putting Bryce Zabel, who's a good writer, is putting that into a series. It's just because it's you're looking at the fact not only of the individual who went through abduction experiences, but you had an interracial couple back in the 1960s. And they're going to explore probably, the difficulties they had along those lines, too, at the same time. So I just hope it turns out good. They didn't have a release date when it's going to come out, but you've got some good people putting it together. And hopefully it just doesn't get dramatized too much and away from the original storyline, because
we don't need another Fire in the Sky.
Well, you had Project Blue Book that went into season 2, and now they said it's canceled. It's no longer going to go into season 3. And the thing is, that was based on actual people, but to me, again, I'm the researcher. It was just dramatized too much and got away from the actual facts. To keep me interested from that point of view, I just looked at the thing as only entertainment, more like the X-Files.
Right.
Yeah.
Towards the end, and that was it.
But at least X-Files, you knew was, just highly fictionalized fiction. Although there were occasionally premises they'd come up for, it's like, oh, we heard about this, we should make a story about that. So they didn't go ballistic. But apparently one of the most disturbing episodes of the X-Files, and I'm going to have to check this out, was from a story in Charlie Chaplin's autobiography. And that was an episode called Home, which is very disturbing episode. But one of their best. And what's really weird is people don't get it. It's technically one of their comedy episodes.
One of the best was Jose Chung is from Outer Space.
Oh, that one was great. That one with Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
And Alex Trebek.
Yeah.
One of the best ones out there yet. So
that was good.
Charles Nelson Riley was in that.
Yeah.
I got a couple of questions here from the chat room.
What is the X-Files? Oh, wait.
No, it's not the X-Files. One's from Tabby Cat. And she wanted to know, when you hear of UFO sightings over or near military bases, why are there so few over bases on the East Coast? And why do you think it's because of how heavily populated those bases are?
Well, if you get them more out west, and by the way, as we're talking, I'm one of those people. I multitask everything all the time. I'm doing like 10 things at once. I was actually watching China Lake, the naval base area out west, because they're doing testing of some very unique looking aircraft. I got an email the other day that basically said, you got to check this out. There's a plane that's been in use for a few years. What they do is they take it up and they launch other like rockets and stuff from it. But it goes up to a U-2 altitude, which is like 65,000 feet. And this thing looks really like two aircraft kind of merged together. Now, it's not the real wide one. This is like two aircraft lengthwise merged together. So it gives a weird appearance. And what they had along with this is they were doing testing with a type of a drone in that region. And the person basically told me, check out this one site I've got access to, which I can pick up some of the aircraft in that region that's not just necessarily commercial aircraft or private. I can pick up military aircraft also. But I think when you're seeing some of the stuff out west, one is I'd want to know what areas out west in particular, because you're going to find more sightings potentially around Nevada out in Area 51, but also California, where a number of the facilities are at who are manufacturing aircraft, and they may fly experimental aircraft out of that region. And I think that's why you're seeing more of these reports. Plus, also, if you think about it, there's kind of like that natural association. If somebody sees something kind of unusual, it's got to be related to the base. We get that here in Ohio because of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, some ones on the East Coast, they're right, I haven't seen that much popping up on the East Coast. And I don't know if it's necessarily because of the population, the densities, the other things along those lines. I just think that there's more testing of the unusual aircraft out west. And that's what some of the people are seeing. I'm not saying that's everything they're seeing, but that may account for some of the things that they're seeing as some of these unusual, unique aircraft.
Okay. Well, it hasn't been in years that I've heard about it, but apparently there was a very famous sighting in Wanacue, New Jersey, near the reservoir up there, that had UFOs sighted over the course of several days. But and there's always, I don't know how much of an urban legend it is, but it's said that somewhere on Route 202 in Oakland, between Oakland and Mahwah, which is my alma mater around Post State College, had that there is, if you go off the beaten trail of Route 202 at a certain point, and I know where the certain point is, I drove by it every day, that if you go far enough, it's sort of like a secret military base that everyone knows about, but they're not supposed to say anything. But I don't know how much of an urban legend it may be.
And there's bases around or areas that may be testing around that really aren't marked that well, that may be, going back to military installations.
The next question is from Nyla, and she wanted to know, Thomas, if you know if the government ever spoke with Travis Walton about his experiences.
I don't know if the government specifically spoke with him. I know I've talked to Travis a couple times. We had him into a conference here in Ohio 6-7 years ago, something like that, and I got to spend 3 days with him myself. And the one thing I'll say is during our conversations, it was kind of unique. So she knows, when I picked him up at the airport, we're driving down the road, heading towards where a meeting was going to be at, which is about a 50-mile drive. And we got to a point I had to ask him. I said, Travis, can I ask you some questions about, your experience? And it wasn't that he was trying to hide things. I think that whatever happened to him affected him that much, He would talk about it, and he wasn't evasive, but he just had, I'm not going to say it was an uncomfortable feeling, but it gave you that effect. Because when we're driving down the road, I said, can you tell me, about certain things? And he started talking about them, but he was looking out the window almost like somebody's being evasive, because he wasn't looking my way. He's looking out the passenger window, out away from me. But he answered the questions, which seemed, very direct. And what was interesting, Henry, is this Harley goes flying by us. And his head snaps around. He looks out my side, watches the Harley. Said, "Hey, Travis, you got a bike?" He goes, "Yeah, I got this." And it's just like a totally different person sitting there. And then we go down the road a little bit farther, and I flip the story back. I said, "Okay, let's go back to the story." And he appears to be more closed in again. He's not evasive again. He's looking out the passenger window again, away from me, but he's answering all the questions again. Then next thing, here comes a muscle car, like a 1960s, 70s muscle car by us. Boom, head snaps around. He looks at it. He's watching it go down the road. I see a smile on his face. I said, "Hey, Travis, you into cars?" "Yeah." And he starts telling me all about his cars and stuff like that. And it was just like, you could see, from what I can make out, something definitely happened to Travis. And his opinion initially was that he was being abducted, but now he's kind of changed that. His opinion now is that he was just basically being dumb. He got out, he got too close to this thing, and he got hit by some force that knocked him back. And maybe they thought he was injured. They brought him on board a craft and made sure he's okay before they, I guess you could say, released him back to the wild. And
get you all tagged up.
Yeah, and that, he says, really, that's his opinion. He said he has had other experiences since then. Now, I know the local law enforcement came in, but I'm not sure to what extent any government personnel may have. And that would include not just military personnel questioning about the whole event, but military personnel on the medical side is what I would be wondering. Somebody wouldn't be asking him specific questions and other things, looking like they already know certain things happen in these events, and to see if they were looking for, let's say, consistencies with his case and other cases of abduction.
It almost sounds
Has Travis written about the other stories? The other abductions?
I don't think he has. He talked about only working on, maybe doing the book Fire in the Sky, just putting out like another edition of it. But I haven't heard him talk about putting out the whole entire other book about the other experiences. But he alluded to the fact that there has been other experiences since then. Not like this, though. Not like to this extent.
So is he retitling his original book, which was the Walton Experience, into Fire in the Sky, or are you calling it Fire in the Sky because that's what the movie was called?
I'd have to look it up. Well, his talk is actually Fire in the Sky when he does it.
Oh.
Or he'll do it, and he may allude something like the real story on what happened, rather than the movie Fire in the Sky.
Which just infuriated me, considering it was written by one of the better writers on Next Gen at the time.
And you had some good people involved with it too, with the show.
Yeah,
good actors and so forth, which was a shame.
But it almost sounds, the way you describe it, it almost sounds like, you know how when you're watching a movie and you have two people in a car and they're talking, and one person decides to get dramatic and he's answering the question, but he's looking away, so the camera is off on the passenger side. So he's almost looks like he's either facing the camera for the dramatic close-up, or the way you say when he snaps back into like a regular guy, perhaps he's been in some way MK Ultra'd a bit, so that when he's asked, he goes into this specific rote of how to speak, because it almost sounds like he's been programmed. This is how I am to respond to these questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what really struck me as unusual about it, because there was just it was like a light switch flipping on and off. It was that much of a change, because when I go, "Hey, Travis, you into muscle cars?" Yeah. And he starts telling me all about his car and so forth on there, his son's car. And you could see he obviously enjoys it. Matter of fact, one of the best laughs I had was we had the day of our conference we had in Ohio that year. There's probably 125 plus people there, something like that day. And it was in a small town. And in that small town, they had the whole main street blocked off, which we weren't close to, but it was only about a half mile from us. The whole main street was blocked off because they had a muscle car show that weekend, taking up the whole downtown. I forget how many cars were there. And I looked at Travis and said, hey, why don't we blow off the conference and go up and check out the cars? And the look on his face was priceless. He just had this big grin from ear to ear. He just started laughing.
So did you?
No. I didn't want to deal with all the people asking for a refund.
Yeah, really.
But I did bring a smile to his face that day. That part was great.
But what you're describing too almost sounds the same as a reaction to post-traumatic stress, which is when you start talking about a specific subject, they will change the personalities.
Yeah.
Back in the war, back in my days.
Actually, Vietnam vets would do the exact same thing.
And that's, to me, what I really picked up on, Barbara. And that's why I thought I can see individuals like Travis in a video. I can see him on TV being interviewed. But when you're able to experience that one-on-one, and you see the body language, you see the other characteristics that they're displaying. And what was interesting, it wasn't just me he did that to. When he got to the motel he was staying at, this is when I was chief field investigator. Our state director at that time, Bill Jones. I walked in with Travis. Bill Jones introduced himself because they hadn't met before. And Bill went in and started asking questions right away about his experience. And he did the same thing to Bill. He turned and didn't look him directly in the eye, but he started talking about the different events. It was just the same replay as what he'd done with me. And you're right, Barbara, it almost gave you that impression. Is this something that's programmed into him to do? This is the way he responds? Or did this effect have a post-traumatic stress disorder symptom that was causing him to do it because it was so impactful on his life? And even though it's been 45 plus years, getting close to 50 years, he still can't break from it.
Well, in a way, fame sort of does that too as well. It's enhancing that trauma because going to these conferences, whatever, he's forced to relive it a lot. Correct?
Oh yes, and you're gonna it's gonna go from going up on basically at the podium, doing his presentation, but not just that. It's going to be, you go to dinner. People are going to ask you questions. You're walking through the lobbies. People are going to stop you and ask you questions. The very minute you're visible, especially when he's as recognizable in this field as what he is, people are going to be stopping you and asking you basically to relive stuff again. And this is one thing, to me, it's interesting about his stories. You don't see it varying, because I would think that if I'd made this up, would I be adding details in down the road? Would I be altering details down the road? Maybe to make the story more interesting. His story remains consistent. It's the same thing.
And you wonder how much, I would say, stuff was enhanced when they made the movie to make it more, I guess, for people to actually be drawn in to watch it. Then,
well, by enhanced, I think you mean just throwing the source material into a fire and making it up as you go, maybe. Yeah.
Well, some
God, I hated that movie so much.
Yeah.
What? Just because they were put in membranes, and he tore through the membrane and all
Cannibal.
that. Yeah.
Basically,
And
the
harvesting
spaceship looked like a
cubes
garbage
from
dump.
mules.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, not exactly, up to code. And there were no Nordics on both of the Starfields. Everything in the books that had illustrations. The books had illustrations, for heaven's sake, of how the Greys looked and everything. And here they say, let's make them really scary. I'm like, it's not a haunted house movie. Come on.
People of Earth is far more realistic.
Yeah. Oh.
Hey, I love Jeff the alien. He is one of the most interesting characters on that show. Not our Jeff the alien.
Jeff the alien. How do you know that our Jeff's not an alien?
Jeff, you haven't seen People of Earth?
Beyond People of Earth, yeah.
Yeah.
I have. I love it. I'm hoping Tom has seen it.
I haven't. I think I watched
People of Earth.
I think I watched one episode, and that was about it.
Definitely watched from the first episode.
Okay. Because I forget when I caught it. I just happened to turn it on one night. I'm like, I can't get into this, and I don't know. Maybe it's because in some areas I'm.
Well, give it
Give it. You will.
Yeah.
Give it about 3 episodes, and then you'll be both. You should be very amused at how their take on it, but then you'll say they actually know what they're talking about in a lot of respects, because they do have the Gray and they have the Nordic and Reptilian, and I'm like, okay, so they've either done their research or they're very much into this, and it does tend to get it's very absurdist, but I think it's almost aimed at people who are into ufology as much as just into. Just saying.
Jeff, you're breaking up.
Yeah. And also they have the trigger, the mechanical
of course, I broke up.
deer. So, I mean, there is that. So, it's absolutely a fascinating show, and they did do their homework. And when you look at the support group, it's a fascinating group, Thomas. You'll find it rather amusing.
I'll have to check it out. I'm getting in this habit now where I don't know, it's just because I'm getting older or I'm becoming more nocturnal and I don't sleep at night, or maybe I'm just afraid I'm going to be abducted at night.
Into the season.
Maybe I'm afraid I'm just going to be abducted, and if I fall asleep, they're going to come get me. I don't know what it is, but
I would believe that.
I wake up a lot of times at 2:00 in the morning and cannot sleep, and I'm up till like 5.
Wow.
Well,
is that about like the times when you were kind of like abducted?
Well, I can't remember the exact times it happened, but I was thinking about that the other day, and I don't want to put pieces together erroneously, but I'm just wondering if that wasn't the time that I would hit that, like me and Barbara were talking about earlier before the show, a certain sleep state, that you go into, that all of a sudden, the experiences start happening. And there's been a couple times I've been wondering if something hasn't happened again. I can't prove anything, but there's been some traces that something may have. And it goes back to within the last month. Maybe they're just checking on me to make sure that, hey, yeah, the guy's still here. Yeah, he's getting old.
He's not
traces as in things moving around, traces as in
physical after effects.
Physical. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the best way I would sum it up, leaving it kind of open. Physical after effects. That something has happened on here that are unusual. They're very rare occurrences for me.
It could just be checking on you, but they're probably saying, well, he's not good to us anymore.
We're going to throw him back. Why did we take him to begin with? You'd think that he would have improved by now, you know?
Yeah, his body parts aren't no good now.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
So, do you hear much stories about the people who claims to have been abducted? I mean, what kind of research do you think that they're doing on them?
Well, we've had a few cases come in. I've started letting some of the other guys work the cases, some of our other field investigators, so they get experience that. But we had a few coming in, and a number of these at times go back a number of years. They're not necessarily recent. Their experiences go back a number of years when the individual's, let's say, younger. And they're describing pretty much similar things that, you know, they have, I guess you could best say, put as almost like visions, or, for lack of a better word, dreams of something happening at night. And it goes back to similar experiences of what I've described, where the individual remembers kind of like falling asleep or being like in a dreamlike state. And they remember being removed from like their bedroom where they're staying at. And they've had visions of potentially like aliens involved around them. And they remember being brought back, or at least waking up to where they were. One of the ones I had that was very unique on her, Henry, was the individual actually showed me a book that she'd created. And the book was really kind of like stick figure drawings, because she wasn't an artist. And she says, I want to describe to you my memories of experiences. And this one's kind of unique, where she said, well, back when she was a child, she remembered being in her bedroom and looking out of her bedroom window and seeing an object land over a hill behind her house. And this was in the northeastern Ohio area. I'll just describe it as being that. This object lands over a hill. It's at night. She gets out of her bedroom, even though she's not even 10 years old. She's probably like 8 to 10 years old at a guess. And she goes over this hill and she sees what appears to be, she described it as a circus. She gets down in there and she says she sees all these kids in this region playing like they're at a circus. And she's told to go home and she doesn't want to go home. So she remembers waking up, finding herself back in her bedroom. The next morning, she started talking to her mother about that, because she remembered seeing not just her going out, but her other family members walking out to the same area. Ooh. And she asked her mother about it, and her mother says, I don't want to talk about that. And she says her mother never would talk about that vision again, that dreamlike state that she was going through again.
Yikes.
Yeah.
She was probably disappointed they didn't give her popcorn and stuff.
Well, she could never find out anything about it. But she says, you know, I had this vision. I didn't want to come back home. All the children were kind of fun to play with. And she goes, but I had to go back. And she goes, but it wasn't the only time it happened. There were other times. And she says, another time I went out. Again, she went out over this hill back in this whole region. And she goes, I remember being taken on board a ship. And she goes, they started doing medical things to me on board this ship. She could see what appeared to be medical instruments, but she didn't recognize anything. She couldn't relate it to anything. And she goes, and they hurt me. She describes another situation as this story advances, and she's got like this little book, again, it's like all these stick figures, she's drawing things. And she goes, by the way, it wasn't just me that was taken out to the ship. She goes, there are other women like my same age, all kind of lined up, like they're being led into the ship in an order. And she goes, another time, she goes, I was taken on board the ship again. And she goes, I have a feeling that they took, and this is where it goes to the dark side. She goes, I have a feeling they took a baby from me. And that she had the impression that she was impregnated on the first time that she remembered being on board this ship. And she goes, I had a feeling that they took a baby from me because they made her get in a very unusual position. And she had the feeling that they were basically removing the fetus at that point. Well, she says the story goes on. It advances. A time after that, she couldn't remember how long after that. She remembers, again, going out to a region around her house, and she goes, she encounters this child that had very, very unusual black eyes. She goes, the black eyes were scary. She goes, they didn't look human. And she goes, it was a small boy, and she was terrified of this boy for some reason. But on the second hand, she thought, this boy is hers. Like maybe if there was a fetus taken from her, that this was the result. And it was a hybrid, is basically what she was implying. And she goes, I was totally disgusted at this child, even though, she says I shouldn't have been. I was totally disgusted by it. And I didn't want to have anything involved with it, this child again. And again, she had all these stick figure drawings, describing all of these events. And she goes, I just don't know what to make of it. Well, I heard this story, and I mean, we sat down, we talked about quite some time. We had a few phone calls about it. I remember going through the books, and I'm thinking, on one hand, has she been reading books? Has she been, because she did read stuff involved about UFOs, and were, her images in her mind being distorted because of what she'd read, maybe reading similar things. And what was really wild about the story was, I mean, here I made all my little notes about everything. I'm at a meeting with some friends, and I started talking about this woman. I said, what was really weird was the fact that she mentioned that she left her house as a child and she felt like she went to a circus where all these other kids were at. And one of the friends of mine, she goes, what did she say? Where did she say she went to? I said, a circus. And she almost turned white when I said that. And she goes, as a child, I remembered leaving my house and being taken to like a circus at night. And it was a similar type of an experience. And it was just really unusual, I thought, to hear two totally different people describing basically the same type of situation. Now, I don't know if that's maybe been in some obscure book. I can't say. But it struck me as something very, very unusual.
Also, depending on how the circus was perceived by them, was it a perception filter giving the impression that here's a circus you would recognize, or was it like the old, like the Bible depictions that they would try and describe what a UFO looked like by their own vernacular, a wheel in the sky and stuff like that? Were they seeing what we would consider a circus? What was their version of a circus that they were seeing?
You're right. And that's what I didn't get exact details of. Were they seeing was it something like they were seeing like something like rides, or were they associating the images and creating these images we're seeing to be something like rides? Was there that interpretation?
And taking into account, it could also just be inside the big top.
You're right. Big top, or you think of even the arcade.
Yep.
Going through all the games that people play, the rides and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Just no killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah. Oh, I hated that movie too.
Well, yeah, I wasn't too sure.
Yeah, that was kind of out there, but
we got another couple of questions. Another one is from Tabby, and she wants to know what your honest opinion to the theory that Bigfoot only shows up during UFO sightings.
I don't think I'm not a super Bigfoot researcher, but I don't think Bigfoot only shows up during UFO sightings. There were some incidents back in the 70s over in Pennsylvania in which Bigfoot was seen after some UFO events. But if one of my friends was here, he'd probably come out and say that, yes, they can be seen together, but it doesn't have to mean that there's an association with UFOs and Bigfoot, because he's a major Bigfoot hunter. He's one that goes out, tromps through all the woods in West Virginia and everywhere else looking for these things. And by the way, I'm in Ohio, and we have had a few creature sightings here in Ohio recently again.
Really?
And one of them was something that the individual's describing something like a Bigfoot.
Hmm.
And I haven't heard anything back on that, because the bad part is the person commented about, but never filed an official report to follow up on.
Wow. And the other question comes from Kat in the chat room. She wants to know, why would they want hybrids? Why not just take over the planet themselves? Why integrate? And how much like us do they have to be to pull off a hybrid?
Ooh. This is one you could go so many ways on. I mean, you could take the direction of, what if they're not, let's say, in our present, but they're actually coming back from our future? And let's just say they are us from the future, basically. And there's that connection already. But one of the things I've always wondered is, when you, not only my own experiences, but when you hear other experiences, a number of these entities, creatures, whatever you want to call them, ETs, appear to have almost like zero emotions. And it makes me wonder at times, are the emotions basically either something they're not familiar with, or something they've lost, let's say as a through like their own evolutionary process, that they've evolved, they've lost their emotions, and now they're trying to maybe pull some of that things back, repopulate. And also, if you think about it, if you were doing something that's like cloning, you can only keep cloning something for so long before everything breaks down. Yeah, before everything starts breaking down. And maybe that's another reason they want to reach back to hybrids, is to pull back some of the things that they've lost through maybe processes like that. But it's just a very, very open question. You can interpret so many ways. One of the things I'm going back and wondering is, are they basically from our future? I've really been thinking that over and over more. In some of the things, by the way, I've been doing in my late night non-sleeping situations here, is I tend to go back and pull up a lot of old audio files, a lot of old podcasts and so forth, and listen to different ones. And sometimes I'm really wondering if some of these things I'm listening to, maybe there was a degree of facts to them. Like, what if they were time travelers? What if they found a way to go through dimensions?
Wow. Nyla sent me one, said maybe they are making hybrids to populate another planet, because I think they have directed our DNA, putting more evolved beings on another planet.
Well, and that you can't, I can't argue it, because what if there's, with all let's say all the bad humanity has in it, what if there's that good that they want to take and use to go out and seed? There may be. I can't deny that.
You probably just kick the bad ones off. That's how we get black-eyed children.
Yeah.
Walking around like,
and sometimes I wonder about that as I'm driving down the road. Can't we eliminate some of the bad ones? Like the guy who just cut me off or something like that.
Yeah, but you don't want to be at the light and have him turn and just have jet black eyes staring at you.
No.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
And you're right, Jeffrey. I've always thought about that. That too is, I've been out a couple places, and I'm thinking about saying something to somebody. I said, "Yeah, but if they turn around and they've got, these eyes that kind of like, look like a snake's or something like that,
You made my contacts fall out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But the old joke: if we can send them into Mars, why not all of them?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is a concept of that we are only one part of a genetic experiment and seeded out over the universe, which is, maybe that's why all alien life forms we've seen so far have been bipedal. You never know.
Bipedal, or I've even wondered that what if there's something about the Earth creatures, this sort of evolutionary process, that they pulled different, let's say, different groups off at different times and let them evolve different ways. One of the off-the-wall thoughts I've had is, people describe grays as having like this kind of like unusual skin. Well, think about us evolving coming from the water. What if you had a dolphin, which has bluish gray skin, right?
Yeah.
Kind of feels. What if that dolphin happens to take just a slightly different evolutionary turn?
Oh yeah. Well, there's actually a skeleton found now of an ancient crocodile that had two legs and
Really?
could walk.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of different genetic variations that can happen.
That must be one of them from Egypt that's in some of those temples.
Well, when they're just born, or when they're still fetus before they're born, dolphins' fins, their front fins, are 5-fingered hands that meld together into flippers before they're born.
And I also think, along with, not just that, Jeffrey, but you think of how a dolphin communicates.
Sonar.
And what if that this sonar type hasn't developed into like a type of telepathy?
Well, they do indicate that their brains are either larger than ours, but contain something that implies that they might be even more intelligent than us. I mean, heck, they stayed in the water, so that donates a lot of intelligence.
And you're right. And that's why I think like the dolphin may be one of the more obvious animals, to take a different evolutionary step. Think about what if that dolphin doesn't utilize a higher portion of its brain than what we do. We only utilize, about 10%? Something like that?
Well, that's been not debunked, but there's been a lot of question that we use more than they say 10%, but they mean it in a different way. The way when they say hole in the ozone, yeah, it's like when they say hole in the ozone layer. It's not like a manhole the way most people would think hole in the ozone layer. But yeah, one of the things I came across recently is that dolphins can recognize whether or not a human is just swimming or is in trouble, and they'll come to a human's aid for some reason, because the fact that they're also mammals, they understand drowning, so they will actually come to humans' aid a lot of times.
And I've been fascinated with those stories ever since I was a kid, reading about somebody being rescued by a dolphin.
Yeah,
it was. And you also, I think, about the individuals going down to basically swim with the dolphins, on how they may actually have healing properties due to their, like, putting out their little radar by rubbing up against you.
And doing other things when they rub against you, but that's something else.
Never mind.
They do that too.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, Robin Williams conveyed he was once swimming with dolphins and found out, well, that was unexpected.
Well, okay, I'll take that one off my list then, Jeffrey.
Well, no, I would still want to, because one of the things about Instagram I like is there are a lot of accounts that have these weird facts in nature and science, and also, spooky paranormal stuff. And one of them was talking about how, like I say, the dolphins saving people's lives and things like that, but that they resonate at a certain frequency And if a woman goes into the water to give birth in the ocean, the dolphins will actually surround her, make sure that she's protected, and will assist in the birth. And I just think that's amazing and a little freaky at the same time.
Yeah, in my twisted sense of humor, I just, when you said that, I wondered, what are you going to do? Go, breathe, breathe, breathe.
Yeah, really.
I'm just thinking, how are they going to help?
Exactly.
Probably calming.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, they probably did better than I did when my kids were born.
I'll have to post on your page a couple of these cool bits I've come across. So,
Wow.
because I repost a lot of them on my Instagram.
Wow. Now, I know you've been over East Fork Lake State Park. Weren't you at the same time looking for Bigfoot?
Yeah, down Salt Fork.
Yeah, Salt Fork. Yeah.
Yeah, Salt Fork. Yeah, and in one sense, I was looking for Bigfoot. In another sense, I was looking to stay out of Bigfoot's way if he happened to be around there, to be very honest with you. Because that's when I was doing that abduction or missing time case back in like 2012 or something like it was now, 2014. But I went out there at the state park at 2 a.m, I think I got there, something like that. And the reason I went down there at that odd time is the fishermen who'd had the missing time said they were there basically every weekend. And I thought, well, if I go down in the middle of the night, I may be able to catch these guys because they said they've been too scared to go back down there. So since they said they were too scared to go back down there, I thought the week after this whole event with them happened, I thought I'll go down and see if they're making this whole thing up. So again, since I have no life at times, I hopped in a car, drove down, got there like 2 a.m, and they weren't there. So I thought, okay, I'll go ahead and do my investigation. I'll collect trace evidence. I'll go around. I'll look the whole region over. And that area is known for having some of the most Bigfoot sightings in Ohio.
Right.
Because it's a large state park. So as I'm walking around down there through the woods, I'm thinking, if I encounter Bigfoot, first of all, what am I going to do?
You can't run fast, can you?
No, I'm here all by myself, number one. It's obviously
Can't
can
quite
run
ask
fast.
him for an autograph.
Yeah, it can obviously run faster than I can. So that's another thing. If I run and get in the car, that's probably not going to do a whole heck of a lot of good either.
No, not if he's
I
that
get in the
big.
car.
Yeah.
But as I was walking around, I was looking for tracks, any markings, any signs that something had been there. Now, I'm not a Bigfoot expert, but what I was doing is I was looking, of course, for large footprints. I was also looking for branches, which may have been broken off at unusual heights. Something not low, but something much higher. And as I was examining everything, because part of the reason I was looking for branches, by the way, broken, is I was looking if a craft had come down, an object had come down and landed. I was looking in the trees to see if branches were broken off because maybe something had impacted those branches and broke them off. But at the same time, I was obviously looking around for Bigfoot because since that area had it. Also, one of my friends, one of the sounds I heard, he said it sounded something like a sound Bigfoot would make. Now, he's, let's say, a little bit more high-strung. He's very big into the Bigfoot type things. And that, by the way, that same state park holds an annual Bigfoot convention. That's how big that thing is, and it draws a heck of a lot of people for that event. But you're right, Henry. I was definitely on the lookout for it, and I didn't see any footprints. I didn't see any signs unusual. But again, I'm not a Bigfoot expert. But if I'd seen Bigfoot, I would still probably been running, or at least try to run.
Well, if they was chasing you, they'd have probably been slipping on something, right?
Oh, without a doubt. That'd been my only hope, is would have fell and broke its neck. But the guys that had the event, the sighting of missing time, that experience, I remembered that it was several years after that. They've never gone out, they've never talked to anybody about it. But one of my friends who attends that convention down at Salt Fork said, "Hey, those fishermen that you talked about one time that had the missing time case," he says, "they were down at Salt Fork at the Bigfoot convention telling a few people about their experience." He says they weren't, really promoting everything in a way to make money off of it. They're just mentioning, "Hey, yeah, we had missing time down there in Salt Fork."
Wow. Our time is just about gone. And I want to thank Thomas again for being with us. So what I'm going to let you do is give out all your information where people can find you, follow you, and listen to your shows, because you do a show also. And then stay on till after we're off.
Okay. Well, if they wanted to reach out and contact me, if they go to our MUFONOhio.com website, they can click on the link there, which will take them, and they can email, or my webmaster will pass the emails on to me if they want to reach out to me about any sort of events that they may have had. If they also want to hear more of my rambling and stories on there, go to Ufodacy. You'll find it on Stitcher, also on the other various podcasting networks. I've had the show on about a year and a half now, going on a year and a half, and they haven't kicked me off yet, so I'm still there. But that broadcast is on demand. The new episodes come out weekly, and it's rebroadcast a total of 5 times a week. So if they don't hear me once, they can either get it on demand or they can hear me at some other time. Wow. And I've got no outside events, Henry, planned right now, just because of the fact of the pandemic.
Wow.
All the libraries I had things set up with, and some of the state parks and other events, pretty much everybody's canceled, and they're holding back till at least this fall before they do anything.
Yeah, that's the way it is here also. I haven't had anything scheduled to be able to go anywhere to do any investigating or anything. So it's just kind of like all on hold right now. I mean, they're trying to open some stuff back up, but it's slow at doing that. So.
Oh, I know. And one of the TV shows I did was supposed to be on in June, but I'm not sure when it's going to come out. It's still in like post-production yet. They called me the other day about it, wanting some more information. But that should be coming out, and I won't give the name yet until it comes out, until I get an exact date, because like Jeffrey knows how those things can go.
Yeah.
It may sound good, and then be put in limbo for years,
Yep.
All right. Well, another enjoyable show, and appreciate having you on as always, because we really get a lot of good information, and you do a great job at talking. So.
See you in 4 weeks. Oh, wait.
Do I set the date now, Henry?
It'd probably be pretty close, so. With that, we're going to jump off. Thank everybody for listening tonight. We appreciate everybody. And this is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
And Barbara Duncan.
And Thomas Wertman. So we'll see you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal